the Nagant M1895 Revolver. This served the Russian military from 1895 all the way up until 1952 when the Makarov was issued. Even during the Tokarov years, this still remained very popular with Russian troops. In fact, these were still being issued to different government agencies all the way up until 2009. That tells you a lot about the popularity of this really unique pistol. And these are still being used around the world. So this is a very popular, proven design, but again, very unique. Now the original designer was Leon Nagant, who was one of the brothers who designed the Mosin Nagant 1891 rifle. And that's really what put him in a lot of favor with the Tsarist Russian military. The original manufacturing of these started in Belgium up until 1898 when it was transferred into the Tula arsenal. And so these were made at Tula for a number of years. And there are different ones. In fact, you can still find a lot of these with the Tula arsenal marks on the pistol. All the way up into the 1950s were these produced. And the Tula arsenal was producing about 20,000 of these every year. But one really unique feature about this pistol is that it is the pistol used for the famed Russian Roulette. First thing we're going to do is make sure the gun is unloaded. And as we spin the cylinder, we can see that it is unloaded. This is a 7-shot revolver. So it is unique in that in itself. It is the 7.62 by 3/8 rimmed, or the 7.62 Nagant. And here's the 7.62 by 3/8 rimmed round, and you can see it's a very unique design with the projectile down buried into the case. And the reason for this really unique cartridge style is that these revolvers were gas sealed. And when I say gas sealed, this is the only service revolver of that type. And if you'll notice the cylinder, as I bring forward the trigger, you notice the cylinder moves. It actually moves up against the forcing cone right here in the barrel. And that's one of the reasons why this bullet is recessed. The cartridge actually forces itself into the barrel, and this seals the gases. And what it does, it increases the velocity of the bullet up to 50 to 150 feet per second. And this is the only service revolver that's ever had that feature. And this will get about 892 feet per second. It's still a very anemic round at under 900 feet per second with a projectile of 98 grains, but well-placed shots can definitely prove lethal. And these did prove themselves quite a bit on the battlefield. And one of the things too about it being gas sealed is that they could mount a suppressor on the end. Now that's not the reason why they designed it this way, but they began to use them with suppressors. In fact, at the FBI museum, there is a Nagant there with a suppressor that was captured from an NVA back during the Vietnam War. And these were also used by the Russians in that same capacity. And so here I'm going to show you a little bit of shooting, and just notice how the cylinder moves forward up on the barrel when firing. Now, if you've ever shot a lot of revolvers, you'll know that there are a lot of pressures that come out between the cylinder and the barrel. In fact, they're really sharp, and if you have your hand in the way, it could actually cut one of your fingers off. It's that kind of pressure. And so this completely eliminated and took all of that force and put it into the projectile coming out of the barrel. This is one of the double single action Nagants. They did make a number originally that were single action. They were only for the infantry. And for officers, they would give them the double action. And by the time World War II came around, all the Nagants being made were double action. This means when we pull the trigger, it brings the hammer back and then allows it to fire. A single action, you pull the hammer back and then you can release it this way. Because it has this exposed firing pin though, you really don't want to dry fire this too many times. It can damage the firing pin. But it doesn't hurt it a few times. But it is important to note that dry firing this a lot can cause some problems with your firing pin. Now the trigger pull is hefty. In fact, it's over 20 pounds. But it's not too bad. One of the things though that causes that is because of the cylinder moving forward. And you'll notice how the cylinder moves forward, and that really adds a lot of pressure to the firing mechanism. With single action, you can see right here, just bringing it back, it locks that cylinder into place. So you've already got that forward movement. Single action, it's not really too bad. It's just a pretty heavy little pull. It's about 11.5 pounds for my trigger pull gauge. The weight on the revolver is 1 pound and just a little over 11 ounces. The barrel length is 4.5 inches and the overall length is 9.5 inches. Now the grips are also a very unique design. They are teak and these have been hand checkered. Really cool back strap, this wood, and then just a little piece right here in the front strap. And this gives you a little more texturing on the front and back than just a standard slick metal piece right here, which most revolvers have. During World War II, they moved from the wood and went to a sort of Bakelite type plastic. Now the arsenal marks are typically right here. This is the CCCP, which is for the Soviet Union. This gun was made in 1927. You do see a lot of variations in dates, which is pretty cool, with proof marks. If you have the Tula, you'll have a large star right here with an arrow. And those are a little more collectible because Tula is such an excellent arsenal. Serial number right here engraved, and then proof marks in different areas. Now your import marks typically will be right in this area, or as on this one, right here on the underneath of the barrel. I really like it underneath because you don't even see it on the revolver unless you really look. Now another unique feature about this revolver, especially being double action, is that the cylinder remains in the frame when you're loading. Here you have your loading gate that comes down. It doesn't lock up, it just rolls around. Now one of the things though to note is that if the locking gate is in the up position, it rolls, but it only rolls and lines up with the barrel. If the loading gate is down, then when you roll the cylinder, it lines up with your ejector rod. Turn it, half turn, pull it out, and this whole arm right here pulls out. And then it allows you to line up with your cylinder holes and to remove your shells, your spent shells. There's no spring here, which makes it a little bit archaic. You have to push it through. And one of the issues when unloading is that the brass flares out after you've fired the round. So instead of having it neck down, the brass is flared out. But really these are not very difficult to remove from the cylinder. In fact, typically I remove them by hand. Loading the Nagant revolver is like loading a single action pistol. I mean, it's one round at a time. It's not very fast. Then when you're ready to fire, take your loading gate, put it back, and then just bring around your ejector rod, slip it into place, and just turn it a half turn. And obviously there are a lot better options if you're going into combat, but really a piece of history and really for personal defense. This would be an excellent little pistol. The round is somewhat anemic, so shot placement would be very important. Now to remove the cylinder, turn your ejector rod and pull it out. And if you'll notice, there's a little mark here and there's another mark right here on the frame. Line those two up to where they're meeting together like this. And then you can take and pull out your cylinder pin, and this comes right out. If you don't line up these two marks, sometimes this will block your cylinder pin. If you have this lined up, it'll come out very easily. Open up your loading gate, and then you can pull the cylinder right out. Now where the cylinder pin fits through, this is a spring loaded piece here, and this is what comes up against your barrel and allows for the lockup. You'll notice there's a little hash mark, and if you'll look right on the cylinder, there's a little opening right here, and you turn that hash mark to the opening and then it opens up and you can remove with the spring this little part. Now this is great for cleaning and being able to take care of any kind of fouling that goes on. and then you can just replace it, putting it with the little nub down in the slot, and then just turn it. And that makes it really easy to field strip. To reassemble, just depress and slide right back into your frame. Then we're going to take our cylinder pin, slide it into place here, and then bring this around, and then slide in your ejector pin and then turn it. You're all done. The rear sight is molded into the rear of the receiver here, and it's a little notch. And then up at the front you have a blade sight. One of the things that really surprised me was how accurate this was, even with this sight system. Seven yards, not a bad little group considering this little blade sight. It's pretty hard to pick up. I was aiming right here, shooting about 2 inches high. I'm pretty pleased. I've seen some that weren't so accurate. Obviously these are surplus pistols. I really believe that this one has never been issued. In fact, it was in almost mint condition. There was just a little bit of rust right here, and there was one other little place. But I think that was from storage, because really once looking over this pistol, I didn't see any damage whatsoever. These guns are very soft shooting. The recoil is very light. It has a lot to do with the 7.62 bullet and the way this is designed. And the accuracy is very acceptable, especially for the sights that you have on this revolver. Here on the bottom you have a small lanyard loop. A lot of these come with the lanyard that you can attach to it. Mine did not. This one did come with a nice holster. It does have kind of a rubbery plastic feel, but then it has leather straps all around it with brass fixtures. Here we have a small little pouch that you can put ammo in it. Makes it really nice. Even has a little separator right here, so you can put 7 and 7 rounds. It does come with a small cleaning rod, and it goes right into your holster, like so. And then a small little screwdriver with a wood handle. So they pretty much give you all the tools to be able to break this revolver down completely, and definitely field strip is no problem. Now there have been conversion cylinders developed for these to be able to fire the 32 Smith & Wesson, the 32 Smith & Wesson Long, and the 32 H&R Magnum. They can also be fired actually in this gun. Now it's not recommended. I definitely wouldn't advise it. But one of the problems is it'll crack the cases, and there are just some other issues with lead deposits that build up. But they do make a cylinder that you can use, obviously, that would negate that. But one thing you definitely don't want to use in this revolver is the .327 Federal Magnum. But I would stick with the 7.62 Nagant ammunition. Now there used to be a lot of surplus of this ammunition available when these first started coming into the country. Most of that has dried up, and it was pretty cheap. But right now Privy Partisan does make these in 98 grain. They're new manufacture, they're brass. These are going to fire every time, which a lot of times some of the surplus stuff can be hit or miss. I picked up 3 boxes of this today at Palmetto State Armory, and it was $22 a box. So I know on AIM Surplus, where I bought this pistol, they had it for $21.95 a box. And this was really a beautiful gun from AIM. I was really impressed with the quality. About 10 years ago, when they first started coming into the country, I would see them at gun shows for $79.95, which was phenomenal. And at that time, there was just surplus ammunition. It was a little more difficult to get, and so I just held off on getting one. And then a few years later, I decided, you know what, I really wanted one of those, especially when I kept seeing a lot of this Privy Partisan around. But the prices had really gone up because most of these had been imported and they were gone. I know they were getting around $100 and it went up to about $150. Before I found these on AIM Surplus, and really I put on a alert to tell me when they got these back in stock, and had forgotten about it when I got the alert. These run $189. Before I found them there, I was finding them on Gunbroker here and there and on Arms List, but the price was about $300. But once these dry up, the price will continue to go up. And I'm going to tell you guys, anytime you can find, I've said this a number of times, a good surplus firearm, whether it's a rifle, pistol, or shotgun, when the prices are really low, just like the Mosin Nagant rifles, when those come into the country, there's tons of them, but once it starts to dry up, the prices will really rise. I remember years ago I bought a Lee Enfield for $59, and it was in great shape. It was a beautiful rifle. Those rifles now are between $300 to $350 to $400 a piece. And it's all because after a while, the collectors and the shooters, they'll buy them up, and then they really reach what they're worth. This pistol is definitely worth more than $189. You know, it's probably worth about $300 with all the history and everything about it and the quality of the pistol. So when you find deals like this, I just want to recommend, guys, you better jump on it while you can. The Nagant M1895 Revolver, a piece of history, very iconic, and just a really great collector piece. And for the money, you really can't beat it. The only place I know of right now, again, is AIM Surplus, and I would check those out if you're interested in buying one of these. Just a great way to go, a lot of fun to shoot at the range, and with Privy Partisan ammunition, you know, it's not extremely expensive to shoot, but it sure is a lot of fun. Just a really neat little old revolver. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. One thing you do not use is the one thing you definitely don't want to use is the 327 Federal. That is a big no-no. As they say, slow and steady wins the race. This may be stretching it.